Alright, so in today's video we're going to be continuing my series on how I used to mod, or still mod, Mercedes radios. So in this case we have a Becker BE1350. This is very similar to the Becker BE1150. The 1150 has the keys a bit more squared off where they meet. So between the keys and at the edges, they're still rounded. Anyway, bit of a different aesthetic. Over inside, they are a bit different. I'll show you guys the diagrams I've made. But first, let's just have a broad overview of what's happening. So we're getting power from the AM circuit. It's going into a linear regulator. It's about 7 volts or something, and it's taking it down onto 5. This goes to a Bluetooth module. In this case, it's a CSRA64215. I have a tutorial on how to program those up here. Usually I use Qualcomm's QCC 5008. What was it? I've not been doing this for a while. QCC, what is it? Anyway, I'll link up the tutorials up here. And these work very nicely. They connect automatically. Everything's fine. I have the buttons wired up to the front panel, through this orifice where they poked the standoffs for the cassette mechanism. Now in this exact model and in the Becker Exquisite, you will have a lot of boards over here, right? So this one has a big one here. The other Becker BE1150, so the classic with 2 keys here and a volume knob, has a smaller AM module over here, and you have a lot of room in this area, right? This one and the Exquisite are super full, so I just heat shrink this and find it a living spot over here, right? Nothing temporary, nothing super permanent, because I don't want to weld to the, I don't know, anyway. And as for the AM injection, I'm feeding the left and right channels into the audio mixer, and I've applied some sanitary silicone just to hold everything in tight. And this is very temperature stable and never cracks off, because it is kind of a rubber once it cures, and ground pretty much anywhere you want. And yeah, let me quickly do a demo. So it is now off. How can we stand this up? I don't know, it's full of junk here, but somehow I can't find anything to... Ooh. Let's see, maybe. Oop. Oh yeah, this is precarious. I don't know. Good enough. So over on the phone, once you turn the radio on, it will keep the Bluetooth module off unless you go to AM, which should make it visible once it starts its other blinking sequence. Now, boom, you pair it, set the volume to 100. Oh, come on. The older iOS really wants to break anything that happens in Bluetooth if you go away from the menu. Anyway, so we're connected, aren't we? Yes, we are. Volume to 100, and boom. Faders and equalizer, everything works. And what also works is skipping and pausing. So I reroute the single tune buttons and the scan, which you never use anyway. So let's go next. Previous, next, play, pause. So that all runs fine. And let's do an ignition cycle. Take the backlight off and take the key out completely. and so it will obviously disconnect. The question is, will it reconnect? And keep in mind, iOS has been recently and for its entire history, but it's gotten worse now, super bad in Bluetooth. So if stuff doesn't work, it's kind of because of the iPhone. It also doesn't connect to JBL speakers and Bose and like proper gear, not like what I do here. And so anyway, let's put the ignition back on. Boom. Put the backlight back on. That doesn't matter anyway. So it's reconnected, and you can avoid taking your phone out of your pocket and just hit play. And that is beautiful. And so I know the guy that made this song, but I'm still a bit paranoid with copyright. So let's get to the diagrams. As for the sound, take some lights off. Now as for the sound, you will want to cut these two traces here. Let me get something to point with. You'll want to cut basically this track here that goes under these, through these pads. And this one here, which comes out of this via right over here. And what you could do is either solder right onto the mixer chip, which I used to do, but you can actually scratch the trace, and it is super fiddly, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, connect the wires that way, and make sure you use some sanitary silicone just to take some strain off of the connections, because these are super fragile. Do not use hot melt glue. Do not use hot melt glue. I've seen people use hot melt glue in these builds. That is the most stupid idea you can have. This area definitely gets up to 90. This area definitely goes about 100, above 100. This is a bit cooler here, but you can expect it to hit 60, 70, at which point hot melt glue is basically tap water. So do not do that. Sanitary silicone, super good, stable up to and above soldering temperatures, right? So definitely way better. And what you have to do is decouple these, block the DC, because these traces, these channels from the mixer, you could check the data sheet of the TDA 7310. So these pins are part of the signal path, and that stays at about, I think it was 7 volts above ground, right? So all the sound is an AC, right? Definitely, that is overlapped onto a 7-volt bias. The Bluetooth board has a headphone amplifier, so the small chip over on this side, so this one, it's Texas Instrument part, very nice, sounds beautiful. That one is ground reference, right? It sits at ground, so you have to definitely not forget these. I have at some points. It makes a huge pop when you start. It sounds weird. It stresses the shit out of everything. Nothing's gonna die if you do it short term. Everything's gonna live if you do it for a few weeks, but it's definitely to be avoided. So some DC blocking capacitor. I use these 100 mic 6 volt. These are not rated high enough, right? So as I've said, this is at about 7. I bought a lot of these. These are very expensive, right? The higher, larger footprint ones are pretty expensive, so I never had problems with these. I mean, I don't know. And they have this little nice jar, so I don't know. Anyway, that's about all we have going on with the signal path, the sound path. And as for the supply, this is actually taken from my diagrams on the Becker BE1150. So this has this tiny module, which I was talking about earlier, has this ferrite, which is called, what is it called? It's called D385 on the board, and it actually has the same D385 over here. It's moved ever so slightly, but you can cut this trace or actually cut this off completely and just take your 8 volts over here. I've done the same with this, in that I've scratched, as you can see, this part to kill whatever AM circuitry is in here, because this uses, I would imagine, quite a lot of power, and heats this thing up tremendously, right? This being in an enclosed metal box, your car is at what, 60 in the summer heat, global warming is getting worse, and you put another 3 watts into here, so that will definitely heat stuff up, and these will shut off above 80 degrees or something. They're very sensitive. They have some pretty fancy clocks inside. It doesn't really like going above, so if you put it over here in this area, it will definitely turn off in summer. Anyway, and ground again anywhere on the chassis. And as for the buttons, that is where all the magic happens. So this would take, let's normalize it to 5 hours, 1 hour, 1 to 5 hours, depending on how slow and fiddly you are. The buttons are 3 times as expensive time-wise. So the Becker BE2210, the one with the 2 buttons, the Becker 1150, I think, and also this one use a 2-layer multi-layer board for the front panel. So it's more than 2 layers. I think it's 3, maybe 4, I don't know. I have to check. But for this to work, right, you have to disconnect the 3 buttons from the matrix. All the buttons are in a matrix. So let's say you have just 6 microcontroller pins and you want to interface more than 6 buttons. So you link them this way and you put buttons at all the crossings. And this way you get 9 buttons. With 4 you get 16, with 5 you get the point. So all the buttons and everything, keyboards, remote controls, all of them are multiplexed, or even Charlie-plexed. And it's pretty complicated to take them out of the circuit because you need to leave the rest of the lattice intact, right, and just take your buttons out. Because what we're doing is feeding 1.8 volts with the COM link and taking that out through the 3 buttons, right? So these would be low, and when you press the button, they will go up to COM, which is 1.8. And these buttons connect to the Bluetooth boards. You'll see them marked pretty clearly on all sides. It's a bit cluttered here, but they are labeled, right? Volume plus, volume minus, next, previous, play, pause, and COM. Anyway, so let's start with the cuts because those are the most expensive on this build. I've relabeled them. Let me see if I can find number 1. So number 1 would be these 2 lines, these 2 traces, right? And going on to the back, somewhat a bit. 2 would be this trace over here, squeaks through the empty resistor position. 3 would be the trace just above R851. 4 would be this one. And now it gets here. 5, you have to actually drill because it's in an inner trace. So this is a pain in the fucking ass. As you look at the board with the display up, text right up, you have R810 and you will see a trace snaking right through these 2 pads or vias, whatever they are. Now you have to take a 1 drill and go very carefully. I think in this point you can actually go all the way through, but yeah. You'll see it way better when you illuminate from the back side because this trace is closer to this layer than the bottom one. And so you have to knock that one out. And now there's 2 more in this area, which I've, this is the first board I actually drilled. So I've made this little photo here. What was this? So 5, 6, and 7 are these. Now I don't have a picture of this, but you can see it, right? See how it looks right below the surface. And 7, I actually do have a little image of how I drilled it. It's a pain in the ass. When I drilled this one, I actually did completely cut this trace. God, it was a pain in the ass to reconnect, right? I didn't want this LED to light, so. Anyway, and 8 is another one. 8 is actually on this side. right between these two location holes. And again, this is how it looks when you drill it. Just a 1mm drill. Just go in a bit, blow it out, and you'll see the copper on the edges of your hole. And once you drilled and disconnected all the traces that need to be disconnected, you will need to rebuild the lattice around the buttons that we're going to be using. Now this build uses three links. I use just regular magnet wire for this. Let me see if I can find a little piece. So anything will do. All right, so we have link 1, 2, and link 3 actually has, holy shit, there's 4, sorry. So 1, 2, 3 has 3 connections, so here, here, and here. In the case of the Becker BE1350, this actually does have a button populator here. And link 4 would be this one. And once that's done, you could just connect the 4 wires to these pads and you'll be done. One more thing to note, I don't know if I can show it over here. I highly recommend cementing the, so you will have the tiny magnet wire floating around the board, right? And that is a huge problem because these will be vibrating their asses off, right? Even if you hold it inside your house, even moving it occasionally will make such a long thin wire link vibrate. And so what you want to do is get a little, I use a lot of it, so I have it in a small syringe, but you can use the big gun as well. And just where you have the wire passing, let me see if I can actually demo this, right? So you have the wire passing and just douse the area, just a bit like this. Boom, and I like to do it well, not this close, but, right? And once this dries, again, you saw how rubbery this sets, and it will not allow the whole wire to have huge vibrations, right? It'll increase the frequency that this resonates at. And to that extent, I wanted to do this on video, I almost forgot. So I think I'll show you guys this and we will be done. If you want to see the other radios, I do have a playlist. So you have this wire loom with 4 wires, right? And it's going right next to some stamped metal, which is sharp as fuck. I'll tell you. What you want to do is get some sanitary silicone in there just to not have this rub right against that. So this is extremely complicated to film and inject, but I think we got it. All right, and at the top. On the bottom. Whoop. All right. So that shouldn't have any more tearing issues for the foreseeable future. Now I'll just set down, and don't forget to leave a little pip out for next time. Now I'll just set down the cassette mech, close everything, put my warranty label on. I have some other videos where I show you guys how I made the labels in Figma, but I'm going to skip that for now because I'm super late and a bit tired. All right, if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments and have a good one.